All right, today we're going to talk about a problem that, let's be honest, every single data team knows all too well. It's the mystery of our data's hidden journey. How does all that raw, kind of messy information magically transform into the clean, structured tables we rely on for, well, everything? So let me start by asking you a really simple question. When you look at your dashboards, your reports, your databases, do you know where that data really comes from? I mean, can you trace every single field all the way back to its original source, through every little transformation? For most of us, if we're being honest, the answer is probably not. And that's a huge problem.
And this really gets to the heart of it. You see, in the modern data world, we're fantastic with the what. That's the schema, the final structure of our tables. We know all the columns, we know the data types, no problem. But the how, the why, the lineage, which is the story of how that data actually got there, well, that's often a complete black box.
So, how do we shine a light into that black box? Well, it all starts with a completely new philosophy, a new way of thinking, treating your documentation as code.
Doc as code is exactly what it sounds like. It's the practice of defining the final structure and its origin story together in one single file that's version-controlled and lives right alongside your actual code. This means no more separate, out-of-date, and, frankly, untrustworthy wiki pages.
And this whole philosophy is the engine behind a tool called DBDocManager. Now, here's what makes it so cool. It doesn't just track tables, it tracks data down to the individual field level. It's also built specifically for one of the most common jobs out there, transforming messy, nested JSON from NoSQL databases into clean relational SQL tables. And maybe the best part? It spits out a beautiful, portable HTML website you can share with literally anyone. No dependencies, no servers, nothing required.
Okay, so you might be wondering, how does this thing actually work under the hood? Well, the easiest way to wrap your head around it is with an analogy that any software developer is going to know well.
You should think of it just like a compiler, but instead of turning something like C++ or Java into an application, it turns your data definitions into a fully interactive, easy-to-understand documentation website. And yep, it follows that classic three-step compiler process. First, it parses your definition file, just reading all the rules and relationships you've laid out. Then, and this is key, it validates them to make sure everything makes sense and connects properly. And finally, if all those checks pass, it generates the final static website. Simple as that. Now, the parser and the generator are great. They do their job. But the real magic, the part that ensures quality and builds trust in your data, it all happens in that validation step.
And this isn't just checking for typos. No. It's making sure your connections actually make sense. It'll catch you if you try to document a link to a database column that doesn't even exist. And crucially, it acts like a watchdog. It warns you about any columns in your database that have no documented origin story. It's basically a spell checker and a fact checker for your data's entire journey.
Okay, so we've covered the theory. Now let's get into the fun part and see how just a tiny little bit of code can create a massive amount of clarity.
Everything, and I mean everything, hinges on this: a simple, human-readable mapping definition that you write in a JSON file. This file becomes the single source of truth that connects the two different worlds, your raw source data on one side and your clean target database on the other.
So here's how it works. You start by defining the destination. You use a fully qualified name to tell the system exactly where the data is supposed to end up. In this case, it's the email column in the DIM customers table inside the warehouse database. Super specific, totally unambiguous. And then you connect it back to its origin. You just point to the source system. Here we're just using an ID called MongoProd. And then you use a standard JSON path to pinpoint the exact nested field .contact.email where the data came from. That's it. That's the whole mapping. You've created a clear one-to-one connection right there in your code. And this incredibly simple mapping is what enables what the creators call the killer feature, column-level lineage. We're not just saying, this table came from that system. We are saying this specific field came from that specific source attribute. Seeing this visualized is really where it all just clicks into place. So when you run the compiler, what do you get? You get this fantastic interactive website. You get a graph showing your data's entire journey from start to finish. You can literally click on a single field in your final database table and trace its path all the way back to the original source document. You also get a classic ERD, an entity relationship diagram showing how all your tables connect to each other. And it's all explorable. You can zoom in, pan around, and really dig in and understand the connections.
Now you can probably see why this is so much more than just another tool for engineers. This is a genuine game changer for how an entire data organization can work together.
So, who wins with an approach like this? Well, pretty much everyone. Data engineers get to be the authors of a single source of truth, not just people fixing bugs all day. Governance teams can finally achieve 100% traceability. And analytics engineers, they can instantly understand the logic behind a field without having to schedule yet another meeting.
When you boil it all down, this approach builds deep trust because you have a single, verifiable source of truth. It enables powerful automation in your governance thanks to that validation step we talked about. And it fosters real collaboration because now your documentation evolves right alongside your code, as it should.
And I think this quote from the source material just says it all perfectly. This philosophy takes documentation out of those dusty, out-of-date, and untrusted wiki pages and puts it right where it always belonged, in the code repository, living and breathing with the system itself. So let me leave you with this final thought. This idea is so much bigger than just data lineage. Think about it. What is the black box in your world? What's that complex process that nobody really understands that you could finally demystify by treating its documentation as code?